Once my brother and I were old enough, of course, to go to school, we got on Hamish Begg's school bus. Hamish Begg was a neighbor, and actually I went to Beaupre School for grade 1, and that would have been 1958, I believe. It was a one-room school, one teacher, grades 1 to 9. But only for grade 1. And then when my brother was 2 years younger, he and I were bused to Cochrane after that, and so we went to school in Cochrane. And my parents were very hard workers, and I should talk about my mom's involvement with the ranch because she loved horses. She knew horses like nobody I've ever met knew horses, but lots of people knew horses, I guess, in those days. When you grew up, you depended on horses for livelihood, for transportation, for recreation, for solace in the time of sadness, for celebration in the time of happiness. It was all about horses, and she would do anything on the ranch she could ride a horse to do. She wasn't real happy about running a hay rake, but my dad had, and we still have today, a 20,000 acre grazing permit on the forest reserve adjoining us, and for her to get on her horse and head back in there and check on the well-being and the whereabouts of the cattle was something that she loved to do. And I can remember as a little kid, my dad had an employee called Anton Hommett, and he was a German, but he was quite elderly at the time. He was probably, elderly, I'm talking in terms of the physical demands of ranching, probably in his late 60s. And he had a bit of an accent. And in the morning, he'd say to my dad, what are we doing today? And Dad'd say, we're going riding. And he'd say, is it going to be a long ride or a short ride? And if it was going to be a short ride, then he'd say, then I hauled the horses, which meant he would catch the horses and grain them and get them ready to go. And if Dad said it was going to be a long ride, he said, then I look after the boys. And he would babysit my brother and I when we were preschoolers. And he'd always find something to do that he could involve us with and take us out and sharpen fence posts or clean the chicken house or do some darn thing. But he was always making things happen. But he was just a kind old man. And so many of the ranches had employees like that in those days. They made starvation wages, but they got room and board. I can remember a different fellow that my dad had would actually ride the school bus into town about once a month to get whatever personal stuff he wanted in town. He'd just meet the school bus. Of course, can't do that anymore, but he'd just go in on the school bus and do his business in town and ride back on the school bus. But so, yeah, there were so many characters that were employed on the various ranches and became, in many cases, sort of part of the family and became part of the community and were greatly respected and appreciated in many cases, in spite of the fact that they didn't make much money.